recording is started. And that is grade
It's grade 11, university functions.
university functions. Okay. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yep.
Good. Given function is f of x equals to 4x minus 5, and that is a linear equation, right?
Yep.
Linear means power is 1. The power of x is just 1. And g of x is another function. That is that. And we have to find f of 2. And there we have f of x. F of x is that. And f of 2 means you replace x by 2. So wherever you see x, you replace it by 2. 4 multiplied by 2 minus 5. So 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 minus 5 is 3. So f of 2 is 3.
Okay.
Now, can you figure out g of... that's easy though. We don't need it because they're not asking for that. Now the next question is f inverse 3. Now, we have f of x. We don't have f of f inverse. So we're going to figure out the f inverse, and then we substitute 3 in that. And I'm going to explain to you what's the meaning of inverse function, alright?
Okay.
So now we have to figure out that f inverse x. Now fx is basically y. We also call it y, right? Because it's a relation of x and y. So you have some x values and then we have some y values. And this straight line is gonna look like roughly, it's gonna look like something like that, right? That is that line, the f of x. So y equals to 4x minus 5. That's the same thing. Do you agree with that, Josselyn?
Yes.
Alright. Now in order to find inverse of that, or inverse of this thing, it's the same thing. We replace x by y, and y by x. Do you already know that?
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
Alright, now we replace x and y by x, and x by y. Good? And solve it for y. That means you're going to isolate y from that equation. In order to isolate y, we have to get rid of negative 5, and then we will get rid of 4. Now in order to get rid of negative 5, you add 5 on both sides, right? Why do we add 5 on both sides? Because negative 5 and plus 5 are going to cancel out.
Okay.
We're isolating it, right? You don't have to make notes because this video is going to be recorded there, and you can check it later on. Okay?
Okay.
And now the next step is you have to get rid of the 4. And 4 is multiplied by y. And opposite of multiplication is division. So you divide both sides by 4. 4 divided by 4 is just 1. So 1y or just y. It's the same thing. 1 times y is going to be y. So y equals 2 x over 4 plus 5 over 4. Now here we stop. That is your f inverse x. So y is f inverse x, and the right hand side, the left hand side, you write it there, x over 4. Got it?
Okay.
That is f inverse x. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the inverse functions, and then we will solve the rest of the questions that we have there. Okay? Now you remember I replaced x by y and by y by x. So for example, if we have a parabola that looks like 1 1 and 2 4, negative 1 and negative 2 4, right? Something like that. You know the parabola, right?
Yep.
All right. Now, when you find the inverse of that, it's gonna be a reflection in a line which is gonna pass through here. So inverse of y equals to x squared, or f of x equals to x squared. That's the same thing. They're the equation for this graph. If you want to find its inverse, you're gonna flip it in this line, or find its reflection in this line, and that line is y equals to x. Right? That's why we replace x by y by x. So the reflection of that is gonna bring you into the another quadrant. It's gonna look like, you agree?
Yes.
So the points, for example, this point was 1 1, it stays there, but this point, its x is 2 and the y is 4, so 2 4, it's gonna do perpendicular, so it goes like that, and then it travels like that. So this point is gonna move right here. So they must be equal actually. So my drawing is not 100% right. It's just slightly off. Let me try to make it more wider. Like that. So this point is gonna move there. That point is gonna go here, and then it moves to okay, like that. So it's gonna move right there. Okay, in the same manner, this point goes and reflects. You see? So these points that we have there, when they reflect, x becomes y becomes x. For example, this point is 2 4, and that point is going to be 4 2. Okay? That point was negative 1, negative 1 1, and when it reflects, it becomes 1 negative 1. So your x becomes y, and y becomes x. So it flips. You got that point, Josselyn?
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, they do a kind of flip. So the flip, when you flip the things, for example, let me make something more easier than that. If you have 1 1, I'm gonna consider that one. For 4 2 3 4, it's gonna be 2, right? Looks like that. So when you substitute 1 here, y is gonna be 1 as well. So 1 1, and when I substitute 4, y is gonna be 2. So it's 4. It's a little bit off. It should be here. X is 4, y is 2. And if somebody asks you to do the inverse of that function, inverse of this function, you're gonna draw this line. It's a geometrical thing that we're doing right now. And then you move the points. This point is on the line, it stays there, but this point goes into a perpendicular distance, and then it travels, right? It travels whatever distance you have here, it goes up, right? So that point, this point moves right there. That point was 4 2, and this one becomes 2 4. Make sense to you, Jocelyn?
Yes.
2 3 4. So your graph is gonna look like, that's the inverse. This one is inverse of that. Let me use another color for that, and say inverse is gonna look like Good. So reflection of this black in this line, and that line is y equals to x. Good.
Okay.
So we can use this logic, and rather than doing this whole thing, you can use that logic. So they were asking for f inverse 3. So now we know that f of x is 4. Let me go down there. Okay. Actually, I moved a little bit, so. Okay, good. Well, I can do it here. Yeah. Um, y equals to 3x, 4x minus 5. And the f inverse is 3. Now we know that f inverse is a y um, is a y equals to something, right? Some function. So that means the x in that one, they're writing 3. So this 3 is going to become your y, right? This is the x of f inverse. So you're going to switch this to the y equals to 3. And then substitute this y there and find a corresponding x value. Make sense to you?
Yeah.
Because f inverse is going to have opposite coordinates. So coordinates flip. So in this form, we see that this is the x value, and f inverse is representing y, and we know that when you do the inverse of that, the thing's gonna flip. So when you substitute y in there, you will get 3 equals to 4x minus 5, and you're gonna get a corresponding x value. So 3 plus 5, 4x, and then we do, let me make it more neat and clean. So we solve it. 8 equals to 4x, then I divide them by 4, so my x is 2. So this 2 value is 4, 2, 3. That's the real point, right? And so reflection is going to be 3, 2. So this is the inverse thing, and that is f. So for function, we have this point. For f inverse, the point is going to be 3, 2. It's kind of a little bit tricky, but you're still, okay if you do the whole inverse. So I'm avoiding inverse. I'm just figuring out inverse through the graph that we know, the knowledge that we have about the graphs, the things, how the things reflects. So inverse function is a collection of the points that we get from the reflection. For example, this point moves right there. Josselyn, does it make 100% sense, or still you're like trying to figure out the things?
This one makes sense.
Okay. So once again, I had that equation. That's y equals to 4, and we can also call this yf of x. So my f of x was 4x minus 5, 4x minus 5, and they were asking about f inverse of 3, and we know that this 3 is x for the inverse. For the f inverse, this is the x value. So if you replace this x with the y and you put it there, you will find a corresponding x value for the f x. So we figured it out, and we found a corresponding x value. So the point in the fx is going to be 2, 3, and if I flip it, that is going to be the point in f inverse x graph. So that is the f inverse value, and that is the x value. So your answer for that is going to be 2. And if you want to do it that way, you simply substitute 3 in here, and then you figure it out. Alright, let me do it there.
Okay.
F inverse 3 is gonna be 3 over 4. So I gave you both of the ways, a shortcut and the long way. 8 divided by 4 is gonna be 2. Now f inverse 3 is equals to 2. That was a long way, and that one was the shortcut. Now, which one did you like more better?
The one you did first.
Oh, okay, I know it's more reasonable, but it's not that hard if you try to wrap your head around this thing. Probably you're gonna like it more better. It's gonna be more quicker than the whole thing. Now the next thing is f of g of 4. That means first you have to know g of 4, and then you substitute g of 4 into the f. So let's try to understand this concept. Now we do write f of x. Let me copy this whole thing. Probably I can paste it down there. Okay. Okay, so now this one, f of x is 4x minus 5, and we know g of x is 3x plus 2, right? So what we're gonna do, we replace x by this x by 4, because we have to know g of 4. So we do g of 4 is gonna be 3 multiplied by 4 plus 2. So we got 12 plus 2, 14. So g of 4 is 14. Is it good?
Yep.
Now I replace x by g of 4. Everywhere where you see x here, you replace it by g of 4. I have x after 4, so instead of writing x, I replace it by g of 4. Okay, because we have to figure out f of g of 4, so I replaced x by g of 4. Now you substitute the values on the right side. Now g of 4 is 14, so I write 14 there, and I solve it. 51. Makes sense to you?
Yep.
So f of g of 4. Any doubt, any question, Josselyn?
Not yet. This all makes sense.
Alright, now next thing is g inverse 11 and then f inverse of the whole thing. Now we already know what is the f inverse. F inverse is this function. This one, right? And in by using the same procedure we can find the g inverse x, and then we can solve this question. Let's figure out, let me write C part. Now we do D, and in D how to figure out g inverse x, and I write down the g of x is 3x plus 2, and we know that gx is represented in y coordinate, right? Gx is y. Now in order to find g inverse, you replace x by y and y by x, and that replacement is going to give you this equation. Now out of that equation we're going to isolate y. In order to isolate y, we subtract 2 from both sides. Good. And then we divide both sides by 3. So your y is equals to x over 3 minus 2 over 3. Now this thing is my g inverse. Replace y by g inverse x, and then write down rest of the numbers. So we have g inverse x. Good? And the question was about figuring out, we have to figure out f inverse g inverse 11. F inverse g inverse of 11. Now I substitute 11 in there. G inverse 11 is gonna be 11 divided by 3 minus 2 out of 3. My base is already same, so I write 3 common. 11 minus 2 is 9, so I got 3. So G inverse 11 is 3. I go there and I substitute. Let me write down the whole thing. Now, before that, I write F inverse of x. F inverse of x is, what was that? That was 3x plus 5 over 4, right?
Yep.
Now, we replace the x by g inverse 11. So wherever you see x, you replace it by g inverse x. So I write g inverse 11 plus 5 over 4, right? F inverse x is that. F inverse g inverse is this. Now, is this step understood?
Yes.
Good. Now you substitute the value, and the value was 3. G inverse 11 was 3, so 3 plus 5 divided by 4. So we got 8 divided by 4, which is 2. So F inverse of G inverse of 11 is 2. That's the answer. Is it good?
Yep.
Okay, so and we can do it by shortcut. You can figure out G inverse 11 by shortcut, and then you do the whole process. Do they teach the shortcut in the classroom, or they are just teaching you the whole process?
I think we just learned the shortcut.
Do you use the shortcuts?
Yeah. That
Okay,
one, the long way helped me understand it though. So
I know that, but the reasoning I already explained to you the reasoning why we do the flip, right? Because inverse is a kind of flip in this line. But anyways, you like that way, it's okay. But still, if you want to do it by the shortcut, I can explain to you this part. Do you want to do it with shortcut?
no, that's okay. It makes
Okay.
sense how to do it. So
Alright. Now, okay, reference plane. 2, negative 4. 2, 1, 2, negative 4. So they're talking about this point. 2, negative 4. Is a point of h of x. What would the new location be for hx plus 3? Now we're replacing the h, and we know that hx is basically y, right? And the y-axis representing hx values, and x values are the horizontal values. So they want you to do y plus 3, because h of x, g of x, k of x, x, g, f of x, all those things are the y values. So what we do, we replace y plus 3. So this point has a y value 4, right? Y value is negative 4 for that point. So we add 3 to negative 4. So you change y to y plus 3, and you get negative 4 plus 3. So your new y becomes negative 1, right? Because you're replacing y by, let me write it down here. So you replace y by y plus 3, and the y was equals to negative 4. And when I replace y by, um, does it make sense to you?
Yeah,
My
that makes sense.
y was -4, and if you do +3, you will get new y, which is gonna be -1. So that's my y of a new point. But the x is not getting affected by that transformation. It's only the h of x, which is y. So your x is gonna stay 2, and y becomes -1. So the point is gonna move right here. Cool.
Okay.
Let me write down the value 2, -1. So that is that. A. Like, therefore, new point is 2, -1. Now the b. Okay, let's do b here. Now they're doing a lot of things. Now we know that's h of x, and if you replace x by, um, 1/5 of x, then the h of x is going to become h 1/5 of x, right? This thing is going to become this. So we have this transformation, and then if I replace my x by this x by the new x by x minus 1, then my h of 1/5, and I'm replacing this x by that. So this is my second transformation. Got it?
Yeah.
And we see that there's a 2 at the front, and that's the y value, because y is h of x, right? And if I replace my y with, let me write the y equals to that, y equals to this, y equals to that. Now if I replace my y equals to h of x, and here I was changing x's. I change x to that, and we call it horizontal because x is a horizontal component. So horizontal stretch. Now, did they teach you all that stuff well?
Yes, they taught it. I'm just not good at I'm not good at transformations. So
Uh, Say it again. You are not using transformations?
I'm not good at it. So like
You're not good at
this
it.
is helping.
Okay, I know that's the hard part. Probably in the next class, I'm going to explain to you all the transformations thoroughly,
Okay.
because it needs rigorous understanding, the basic, the core understanding. If you're doing it on a superficial level, not trying to go deeper, then you will not feel confident about doing questions related to the transformations. So in the next lecture, I will explain to you everything from the scratch. For the time being, just remember these things. That's a horizontal stretch, and by factor 5, right? Uh, Next time I'm going to explain to you why it is a horizontal stretch and why factor 5 rather than 1/5. I'll explain to you these things because today we don't have enough time for that. And here that transformation is horizontal because that's about x. So horizontal uh, shift, horizontal shift to right by 1. And then I'm doing things thoroughly. There's always like kind of shortcut to doing these things, but you have to understand things more deeply. Next transformation is y is changing to 2y. Now my y is this whole thing. My y value is this whole thing. So I multiply my y by 2. So my new y is going to be 2 times by h of. Okay? That's the y transformation. I should have taught you all transformation before we do these questions, but I didn't know. I thought you already. And that's the first question related to the transformations. So I changed my y to 2y, and then it's gonna affect this previous y in this manner, and the last transformation is there's nothing. We are done with that. 2h 1 over 5x minus 1. So now that is that. So that's my transformed function. I started from this one and I got in here by doing first, second, and third transformation is vertical. Why it's the vertical transformation? Because it's happening on y level. Y is a vertical component. So it's a vertical stretch by factor 2. So that's the extra things. So now let's talk about all those things. The point was, what would the new function be? Okay. Now the point was 2, negative 4. 2, negative 4. Now the x is facing 2 transformation. The first one is the stretch by factor 5. So that means you're going to multiply 2 by 5 because it's a factor. And that is that. And then you do horizontal shift by factor 1. And then you do plus 1, right? Because it's to the right. Plus 1. That's my new x. And my y is facing only one transformation, and that is a vertical stretch. So my y is a stretch by factor 2, so I simply multiply it by negative 4. So my new function, so you're going to look at these things, not on these things. So whatever I'm writing there, horizontal transformation, it looks different actually. It's always opposite. Negative, you're going to say to the right. Over 5, you're going to say factor stretch by factor 5. But the vertical transformations, they are not opposite. They are according to your senses. Double, you're going to say stretch. Half, you're going to call it compression, right? So for the time being, just remember horizontal stretch or compression or the transformation, which are horizontal, they are going to be opposite whatever you observe in the transformations. Okay?
Okay.
So now the new point is going to be 10 plus 1, 11, and negative 8. So this point is going to shift to that one under these transformations, under these 3 transformations. 2 are horizontal and one of them is a vertical transformation. So this is one of the rigorous topic, and you have to understand it. And next lecture is going to be on all kind of transformations. I'll teach you everything from the scratch. All right. And the next one is, let me write it quickly here. Now, how do we do in the exam? We write h of x, and then we try to figure out what kind of operations they did. We will factor out. The first step is you write whatever you have outside, then you write h, and then here you have to factor out whatever you have with the x, you have to write it outside. So you write 3 and bracket, and then you do x plus 4. Okay, as the h of 3, x plus 4, and then you do negative 17. Okay. So these are all horizontal transformations, and these two are vertical. So your x is facing a stretch, compression by 1/3, and let me write down my point. That's my point. So my x is facing a compression by 1/3, so you divide it by 3, and then it's going to left by 4, negative 4. And my y is getting a stretch by negative 1/2, so you multiply it by whatever number. You see, I'm writing for y the things as it is, but reversing for the x.
Okay.
So 2, rather than multiplying, I divided by 3. And then 2, whatever now we got there, here we have x plus 4, I do negative 4. So x was facing 2 transformations, and they're they're affecting the 2 in this manner. But for the y, which was negative 4, is gonna get stretch and then negative 17. It's not a stretch actually, it's a compression. So you just write whatever you have there. And the answer, you can do it this way, the long way, or the shortcut. So you do the LCM and I'll write the thing, results quickly. Negative 10 over 3. But you can do your math, and negative plus 1, negative 16. So that's going to be the new point after facing all those transformations that we have there. Good?
Yep.
Alright, so now it's 8-1, and our hour is done. And did you find it kind of convenient doing it online like that?
Yeah, that helped.
Yeah, because it's recorded on the same time. And I'm gonna put your email there. Then it's gonna be shared with you. The whole file is gonna come as a PDF, or you'll get an email.
Okay.
And you will get an email, probably in the inbox or in the spam box. So you open that email, then you have to, if you have the Hotmail, or not, so not a Hotmail. I think it's a Hotmail account.
Yeah.
So Outlook account. So you have to make Outlook account. Then you can see, or you can add it whatever we're writing right there. So this is a OneNote. Do you already use in OneNote?
No.
No, it's okay, but it's not that hard. I mean, you will figure it out. Let me try to add you. Um, okay. These are all online students. You are right there in white. Share the second because it doesn't seem to be. Alright, my OneDrive is full, so I have to delete a couple of documents. Then it's gonna move to the OneDrive. Okay?
Okay.